The Nike Zoom Fly 6. Is this one of the better daily trainers you can buy in the year of late 2024 into early 2025? Let's review it and let's talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed, watching the content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs for the shoe, somewhere you can see them. And first thing we'll do, kicking off with what our outsoles look like after a couple of miles. Not really quite close to 25, but when I was running with this shoe, there were a couple of conditions to keep in mind as we observe the outsoles. Number one, it was a lot of snow in the Chicagoland area just this past week. Today was a better day, so I was finally able to, get off the treadmill and run outside and sort of get a better impression of what this shoe feels like when we go outside. And two, I've had a few Zoom Fly series shoes in my day, so again, I have a little bit of 2 cents that I can throw in as we get into that. And there's a little bit of hair on the shoe, probably just from some carpet that I have. Whatever, doesn't matter, let's get into it. Outsole wise, I think the grip pattern that's presented here is fairly good for a lot of conditions. The tread has been cooperating thus far. As you can see by the inner side of the shoe, we have these dots that kind of stick out just to show you how much you've kind of kicked in the tread, and on the outside of it you can see I've started burning off a lot of it. I think the shoe has about 20 to 25 miles at this time. I've been juggling this one and the Nova Blast 4 just from time to time just to just have a little balance, because again, carbon plate shoe, as we'll get into, you don't want to run with it all the time just for the sake of your ankles and potentially your knees, but whatever. So here's some of the other things to consider with the specs before we observe what happened to the outsole of the left foot. Starting from the top, we do have this mesh upper, which has kind of got a 2-layer. We have this sort of shiny layering on the top, and then we have a more translucent sort of mesh pattern that's underneath that particular pair of shoes, just to give you more of, I would say, some breathability, but also some protection from the elements. The shoe does kind of run a little bit warmer, so this is a good winter running shoe in my opinion, just the way it stands, with a few other conditions to keep in mind here. With the upper, the way it's situated and kind of set up, it does run a little bit tight, so you may want to consider just going a half size up. Just my opinion. I usually run in 8.5 size shoes. I do have a lot of toe box slamming just kind of across the entirety of the front of the shoe box, so that's just something to consider when you're playing around with this at a running shoe store, that if it does feel tight in your average size, don't be surprised, right? Other things to note, we do have, the gusseted tongue. We just have the shoelaces just running the usual way. They're not running into the material itself. They do have kind of like the textile piece that runs on the outside piece. We have the gusseted tongue that's extremely loose, so you'd have to play around with the fit of the tongue a couple of times just to make sure you get the lockdown right. But in addition to that, we do have another piece that I consider a con, which is that you can tie this shoe too tightly, and as a result, you do have to play around with the fit a little bit more than usual with this particular shoe, okay? So, all of that being said, we do have some comfort in the ankle area. We have a lot of cushioning, a lot more than I think previously in other Zoom Fly models. But the one thing I do want to note, again, is you do have to play around with this fit in the frontal area of your foot. The heel area, not so much. There isn't any sort of heel slippage as far as I felt at this time with the shoe, but yeah, just be careful with what's going on in the shoelace area so you don't cut circulation, so it doesn't feel like your feet are getting cold while you're running and things like that. So that's just the first time I've experienced that in a shoe like this in a hot minute for that matter. Now let's talk about the outsole. This is where Nike always has its whack kind of things happening, or really good things depending on what we've got. In this case, though, we have 2 types of foam, right? We've got the Zoom X, which is this top piece that starts from here, runs all the way across, and you might see from this particular decal right there, that's where the foam cuts off. It's cleverly hidden in this black area of the foam that it does start the crease upwards. And then at the bottom, so that's the top layer, Zoom X. The bottom is the EVA foam that Nike uses for more durability and more protection from the ground. despite it being labeled Zoom X. This is just something I learned both from commenters and from self-observation of just where this Zoom X logo gets placed, because the one time I looked at it in the Pegasus Turbo 2, it was kind of just like, hey, what gives? This doesn't make sense. Why would you want the Zoom X on the bottom for a daily trainer? And somebody in the comments pointed out that they do this thing where they label it on the EVA foam for some odd reason. So whatever, just a fun little piece there. We do have some cutout here, probably as a material saver, as an aesthetic that's similar to the Nike Vaporfly 3, and kind of pays homage to the Alphafly 3 as well. So interesting piece there. And of course, we got the fly plates, we got the carbon plates in the shoe, as you can see. So as you can probably assume, what's going on with this shoe is that it's not going to be your recovery day type of daily trainer. This is more of your speed / regular pace type of shoe that you would use when you're training, or when you're probably in training mode for something like your race day or potentially your marathon. And the idea is when you're going to push some of those track workouts, some faster road workouts, more towards like your tempo to threshold to interval style workouts, this would be probably the shoe you refer to for those types of sessions. Now, other things I read online regarding the shoe is that it seems for some people that the plate is way too flexible, which I don't know if that's necessarily a problem, because again, the way I see it is like, it's there to help you, it's not there to be you as a runner, if that makes any sense. Like, the 4% that this plate is supposed to put in for your daily work, it doesn't totally matter in the grand scheme of things in terms of your speed. What's most important here is if the plate with the foam setup is going to hurt you if you're running for long periods of time in it. And in this case, my initial thoughts with the shoe was that it was kind of stiff, that it just felt like the carbon plate was there, and I'm sure if I beat into it when I was on the treadmill, that I would get more of a response out of this shoe. But overall, I'll just say this, it's not bad. The shoe's ride is not bad. What I will say, though, is that I've had better in the past, and I've actually experienced a little bit better with shoes that don't have carbon plates, such as, in this case, the Asics Nova Blast 4. Like, that's a shoe with an insane stack height, with an insane amount of, I guess you can call it, max cushioning. And that ride of the shoe almost feels faster than this one at times. However, the paces on the treadmill versus my heart rate don't usually lie. I will admit that the pace that I would run at like 8 minutes per mile in the Nova Blast 4 is about the same heart rate or perceived effort as I would put in like a 730 in this shoe. So the shoe in those paces does go about 30 seconds faster with that perceived effort. So you can probably begin to scale it accordingly as you get faster, and you kind of know what your tempo, your everyday, your recovery, your threshold pace is at that point. So I will say that from that standpoint, that the speed is noticeable despite the stiffness, despite the fact that it doesn't feel like you're necessarily going fast, which I guess is a good thing. If your perception is that you're going at an everyday pace, but you're like pushing 30, 40 seconds faster, great, that's awesome. So yeah, that's just something else that's pretty nice about this shoe. One, as I mentioned, there were a few cons. One of them was that there's a potential to cut circulation, sort of to its predecessor model, Zoomfly 5, which that brick of a shoe is also pretty insane. That was one of my cons. Another con is like the overall, I guess, visual design of the shoe. Yeah, it's supposed to look like the Alphafly 3, but it just looks so cheaply built. Like, you know, we got the foam kind of sticking out in these weird pieces, like it was just glued together like a science fair project. Kind of just not a fan of the aesthetics of the shoe from that standpoint. And I would probably also say, if I had another con, yeah, I also mentioned the tightness of the toe box. That does feel like you're slamming the toe box, so the sizing is kind of tricky with this shoe. So all that being said, there's a couple of things that still are kind of going wrong with the shoe. I can't say that it's the worst thing I've ever run in at this point. It is fast. It will get the job done for your speed workout. However, you have to just kind of approach it with an open mind if you've had a shoe of higher quality in the past. That's probably the way I would look at it, that it is probably one of the better Zoomfly models that Nike's put out in recent memory, probably closely tied to, I think it was the Zoom Fly 4 or the 3. I'll have to double check it. I had it in 2021 leading into 2022, so whatever model that was. I think it was the Zoom Fly 4. Regardless, that was the model I had then. I enjoyed that version of the shoe. I'm enjoying that one. This one just about the same, understanding what it's supposed to be, and that yes, you can race in this shoe. Yes, you can have a daily training run in the shoe. Yeah, it's great for tempo workouts, not so great for recovery. If you had to pair this with a race day shoe, which one should you do it with? I've seen people say that this is the Alpha Fly trainer equivalent. I don't know about that. In terms of like design and aesthetics, yeah, it looks like it. I would imagine spec-wise, yeah, it could probably do well to be an Alpha Fly counterpart. I think based on the stack height of the foams with 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot, it almost matches better with just like the Vaporfly series shoes, all 3 models from the 1 to the 3. And yeah, that's just some of my 2 cents there in terms of where you would pair that. And then again, as we discussed towards the beginning of the shoe, the outsole conditions, I'm genuinely curious about them as we go along. In the left foot, same kind of deal. We do have the dots sort of fading on the outer area of the shoe, which is typically my strike point with this. And based on the stiffness, it's hard for me to kind of flex with the shoe, including the carbon plate. And that's probably why the inside of the shoe is not taking a beating. So I think overall, the shoe is not bad. It's definitely one of the better Zoom Fly models I've worked with. It's not aesthetically pleasing. It does run a little bit tight in the toe box and in the shoelace area, so you do have to kind of approach it with a more loosely tied shoe. And yeah, it's something that maybe over time I'll see whether the fit gets better, whether the shoe's carbon plate plus ZoomX combination sustains as a speed sort of build. And yeah, we'll just kind of see what happens as the shoe goes along, but nothing else too crazy to say about it at the moment. I've just gotten started with it. I had a few treadmill workouts, I had a few outdoor workouts with it, and I didn't want to put anything out last week just because, again, there was so much snow, I couldn't go outside and get like the full experience with this thing. But now that I've put in a few outdoor workouts, I have a better idea of what's going on. So if you agree or disagree with the assessment, the review, you know, just let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about the shoe, what works for you guys, what doesn't. If you guys have any other questions about it that I may have not addressed, also let me know in the comments there. So I think we'll leave it at that. So thanks again for watching. See you guys in the next one.